Welcome to Mother's Revenge, where heartfelt stories touch your soul and may even bring you to tears. My parents announced a brutal competition where only one child would inherit everything and the rest would be cut off. So I reported them to CPS. When I was 16, my parents gathered the three of us down in the living room and announced the competition. My father stood by the fireplace, hands clenched behind his back as if he were making a business presentation. My mother sat in her normal chair, a leather notepad open on her lap. She had been taking notes on us for years, monitoring everything we did, but I assumed it was simply her organizational skills. Now I see it was something else completely. My father emphasized that they had spent years raising 3 children and investing money in each of us. However, they recognized that this strategy was inefficient. Instead of sharing their estate and attention 3 ways, they would concentrate all on one kid, the most successful, the one who demonstrated that they earned it. The remainder of us would be removed from the will, cut off financially, and forced to leave the family permanently when we reached 18. Tyler, my younger brother, was 14 years old and did not really grasp what Dad said. He inquired whether this was a game show and when we would find out who won. Olivia, my elder sister, was 18, and her face became absolutely white. She had planned to attend an expensive private college, and our parents had agreed to pay for it. My twin brother Jacob sat completely motionless next to me on the couch, his hands clenched tightly around his legs. I could feel the tension flowing from him even though we were not touching. Dad continued to explain the regulations as if he were setting out a business plan. We would be judged based on academic performance, extracurricular achievements, leadership traits, and what he referred to as life readiness skills. Mom would update her rankings every month to reflect our development. We would each be assigned a score out of 100, which would affect everything from our allowances to whether we could participate in family events. The first kid would get benefits and investment. The others would receive the bare minimum necessary by law until we could be formally removed from our families. Mom opened her notepad to show us the first month's rankings. Olivia came in first place with a 92. I placed second with an 83. Jacob finished third with a 67. Tyler finished last with a 60. She had computed these ratings using a sophisticated formula she had devised over the previous year without informing us. Academic grades accounted for 35% extracurricular engagement, for 30% household contributions for 15%, and what she referred to as character evaluation for 20%. That last group was entirely subjective based on her observations of our actions. When I inquired what would happen if we refused to participate, my father's countenance became icy in a way I had never seen before. He stated that we were already involved whether we liked it or not. We lived in his house, relied on his money, and followed his instructions. That night, after our parents had gone to bed, the 3 of us met in Olivia's room to chat. She was angry and afraid at the same time, pacing back and forth over the carpet. She had been the golden kid her entire life, and her status felt challenged. Tyler was silently weeping because he could not understand why our parents were doing this. Jacob sat on the floor, his back to the wall, looking at nothing. I attempted to advise that we all simply keep our usual routines and refuse to compete, but Olivia quickly shut that down. She said that if the rest of us did not participate, she would automatically dominate the rankings and we would all be eliminated except for her. Jacob reminded us that declining to participate might be worse than competing because Mom's subjective character judgment could penalize us for not attempting. We were stuck in a system meant to throw us against one another, and there was no way to get out without losing everything. Within the first week, the competition began to have an impact on everything. Mom put the monthly rankings on the refrigerator where we could see them every day. Olivia's name appeared at the top in green marker. Mine was second in blue. Jacob ranked third in yellow. Tyler's was at the bottom in red. Seeing our names organized in that hierarchy changed the way we interacted with each other. Olivia stopped assisting Tyler with his schoolwork since increasing his grades might lower her rating. Jacob started staying awake until 1:30 a.m. working on extra credit projects to bridge the gap between us. I found myself continually checking in on what my siblings were up to, comparing my efforts to theirs, and calculating if I was behind. The monthly allowances also mirrored our rankings. Olivia received $250. I got $150. Jacob received $75, received $40. Tyler received. Tyler inquired as to why his stipend was decreased from the $75 he previously received. Dad stated that limited resources needed to be allocated to the children who had the most promise. School became a nightmare of incessant comparisons. Olivia and I were both juniors at the same high school, and every test score and assignment grade seemed like ammunition for the competition. When she earned a 95 on a history test and I got a 91, I noticed her beaming as she calculated how it would affect the monthly rankings. When I got a position on the debate team and she did not get callbacks, she spent the entire car trip home in seething silence. Our parents had always favored academic excellence, but it now seemed militarized. Every achievement I had posed a danger to Olivia's position, and every success she had pushed me further away from safety. Jacob was in a different grade, so he did not have to compete in class, but I could see the strain hurting him. He had always been more artistic than scholarly, excelling at art and music over math and science. Now he was straining himself to fit into a mold that did not reflect who he truly was. The character evaluation category evolved into a weapon for psychological warfare. Mom would deduct points for things like having an untidy room, speaking disrespectfully, or displaying a bad attitude. These were purely subjective assessments that she could use to influence the rankings in any way she desired. Jacob lost 5 character points when he disagreed with Dad about whether the tournament was fair. I lost 3 points after forgetting to take out the garbage. One night, Olivia immediately realized that the best way to keep her status was to be completely obedient and pleasant at all times, never challenging our parents' judgments. She changed into an artificial replica of herself, always cheerful, always helping, always playing the part of the perfect daughter. Tyler struggled the hardest with the character evaluation since he was 14 and still acted like a child. He lost points for leaving toys out, talking too loudly, and watching too much television. Things that were typical at his age became failures in Mom's scoring system. Olivia's boyfriend ended their relationship 3 months into the tournament because she had grown preoccupied with preserving her standing. She had stopped seeing him on weekends because she needed the time for extra studying and volunteering. She had canceled plans to attend networking activities that might improve her leadership score. When he informed her she had changed and was no longer the girl he had begun seeing, she did not appear unhappy. She just figured that being single would provide her more time to concentrate on winning. I saw my sister turn into someone I scarcely knew, someone who had given up her real life and connections in favor of a competition our parents had constructed. When I went to talk to her about it, she said I was attempting to undermine her because I was jealous of her first-place finish. Maybe she was correct. Perhaps I was jealous. Perhaps I was just afraid of what this competition was doing to all of us. Jacob began experiencing panic attacks in the middle of the night. I would wake up to the sound of him hyperventilating in the bathroom, and I would sit outside the door guiding him through breathing exercises until he settled down. He was frightened about finishing last and being entirely cut off. Our parents had made it obvious that the child who finished last would receive nothing. There is no college fund, no family link, or any other form of help after the age of 18. Jacob had 2 more years until he could go, and the prospect of being homeless and alone at the age of 18 terrified him. I attempted to tell him that I would not allow that to happen, and that we would remain together regardless of the rankings, but we both knew I could not protect him if our parents decided to fully cut him off. I was simply another child caught in the same system. The domestic contribution category transformed our family into a competitive nightmare of duties and obligations. Olivia began waking up around 500 a.m. to clean up the kitchen before anybody else could. I started performing yard work and repairs that no one had requested merely to get additional points. Jacob took up all of Tyler's allotted responsibilities and completed them himself because Tyler was too young to meet Mom's expectations. We were competing to see who could devote more time and energy to housework, transforming basic household obligations into a ranking system. Mom kept a meticulous journal of everything we performed, timed how long each chore took, and grading the quality of our work. She would examine the bathroom after someone had cleaned it and deduct points if she discovered a single hair in the sink or a stain on the mirror. The home had never been cleaner, but it had also never seemed more unfriendly. 6 months later, Tyler began peeing the bed again, something he had not done since he was 7. The burden of being in last place and witnessing our parents' sad expressions every day was tearing him down. He was 14 years old and believed he was a failure since he could not compete with youngsters 4 and 6 years older. I saw him weeping in the garage one afternoon, and he told me that he wished he had never been born so that our parents would not be disappointed in him. That moment shattered something in me. I rushed into my parents' bedroom and requested that they cease the competition. I told them what they were doing to Tyler, how he was breaking down under the pressure. My father listened without emotion, and then remarked Tyler needed to learn that life is about competition and disappointment. If he could not handle pressure now, he would never survive in the real world. The extracurricular category added another level of competitiveness. Olivia joined every club and organization she could find time for, spreading herself out in order to build an impressive resume. I concentrated on fewer activities but strived for leadership roles in them, eventually becoming president of the debate team and captain of the academic quiz bowl. Jacob suffered since the majority of his interests were in areas our parents did not appreciate. They granted him little points for his art portfolio, but maximum scores for the scientific Olympiad, so he abandoned his own interest to earn points in things he despised. Tyler attempted joining sports teams, but was often eliminated since he was undersized for his age and not especially athletic. Every rejection seemed like further proof that he was the family failure. Mom's scoring system simply considered quantitative outcomes and did not take into consideration effort or progress. Either you won prizes and leadership positions, or you received little points. Olivia was accepted into Stanford University's highly regarded summer program after a year of competition. It would dramatically improve her rating and looked great on college applications. The program cost $12,000 for 6 weeks, and our parents had the money to send her easily. But Dad sat us all down for supper and said that if Olivia went to Stanford, there would be insufficient funds for the rest of us to partake in any summer activities. He might send one child to an exceptional program, or all 3 to regular camps and programs. He asked for a vote on what he should do. Olivia quickly voted for Stanford, claiming that investing in the most successful kid made sense. Tyler supported fair distribution since he had been looking forward to soccer camp. Jacob and I were caught in the midst, knowing that either option would harm someone. I voted for fair distribution because I could not bear the thought of Tyler losing his only hobby. Jacob voted the same way. Dad seemed disappointed in all of us except Olivia. That summer, none of us got to do our favorite activities because Dad thought we lost the chance by not making a firm decision. Olivia did not go to Stanford. Tyler did not attend soccer camp. Jacob did not attend the art intensive that he had been looking forward to. I did not participate in the debate institute that I had intended. Instead, we all stayed at home where Mom assigned us more housekeeping tasks and our parents lectured us on the consequences of indecision. I recognized then that the competition was more than just selecting one successful child. It was about training us to sacrifice one another to prioritize individual progress over familial loyalty, and to embrace the notion that someone had to suffer for anybody to succeed. We had failed that lesson by attempting to remain unified, and our parents were punishing us for it. Jacob's mental health continued to deteriorate over the summer. He stopped eating regularly and dropped weight till his clothing draped loosely over his body. He stopped doing art, completely abandoning the one thing that used to make him happy. He spent the most of his time in his room studying things he despised, urgently attempting to raise his rating. When I inquired how he was doing, he would answer, "Fine," in a flat tone, implying that he was not doing well. I attempted to convince our parents that something was gravely wrong, but they disregarded my worries as competitive manipulation. Mom explained that he was only feeling the usual stress of falling short of expectations, and that he should strive harder rather than seeking pity. Dad encouraged me to concentrate on my own rating, rather than worrying about my sibling. They did not see or care that the rivalry they had fostered was hurting one of their children from the inside out. The monthly rankings got increasingly arbitrary as Mom modified her scoring formula to preserve the desired hierarchy. When my grades began to outpace Olivia's, Mom abruptly upped the weight of the character evaluation area, which allowed her to penalize me points for subjective reasons. When Jacob momentarily surpassed me in extracurricular points, the model shifted to prioritize leadership positions above participation. It became clear that Mom had already determined Olivia would win, and the ranking system was only for show to make it appear like a fair battle. However, we could not establish the system was rigged without access to her specific formula and computations, which she kept locked in her office. We were obliged to continue performing in a competition where the winner had already been determined. Tyler began his 12th grade year behaving out in ways that were utterly out of character for him. He got into fights at school. He spoke back to the teachers. He stopped completing his schoolwork. His grades dropped from B's and C's to D's and F's. When our parents questioned him about it, he stated there was no use in trying because he knew he would never catch up to the rest of us. He had calculated that even if he achieved perfect marks in every area his age, and the points he had already lost would keep him in last place. So why bother trying? Mom and Dad were outraged, but I knew what Tyler was doing. He was opting out of the competition in the only manner he could by refusing to care about the measures our parents used to evaluate him. It was self-destructive, but it was also the last sort of control he had. Mr. Bennett, a guidance counselor, summoned me to his office in the middle of my junior year after noticing troubling tendencies in my case. My grades were outstanding, but I discarded some hobbies I used to like in favor of others that obviously did not interest me. He inquired whether everything was well at home, and for the first time I considered telling an adult what was going on. But what could I say? My folks are not breaching the law. They are feeding and lodging us, but not physically harming us. They are just organizing a competition to choose which youngster deserves to remain in the family. How would you describe it to someone who does not reside there? I assured Mr. Bennett that everything was great, and that I was only attempting to improve my college applications. He stared at me with a mournful face as if he knew I was lying, but could not get me to reveal the truth. That night I went to Jacob's room and discovered him holding a bottle of our mother's sleeping pills. He had taken 5 of them and was clutching the bottle, contemplating whether to take more. I seized the tablets and shook him violently, demanding what he was doing. He stated he could not do it anymore. He could not bear the thought of waking up every day to the prospect of failure. I could not spend another 2 years attempting to win a tournament that was structured to ruin 3 out of 4 of us. I reminded him that he was not failing, but that our parents were failing us. I stayed in his room all night to ensure he did not try anything else, and in the morning I marched downstairs to tell our parents what had occurred. My father responded by saying Jacob was deceptive and used suicide threats to get sympathy. Mom deducted 10 character points for emotional instability. They did not take him to see a doctor or a therapist. They did not cease the competition. They just punished him for crumbling under the pressure they had created. I began documenting everything after that. I kept a notebook concealed in my closet where I recorded the monthly rankings, the arbitrary formula revisions, the unachievable standards, and the psychological devastation I witnessed in my brothers. I had no idea what to do with this paperwork, but I knew I wanted to keep some type of record of what was going on. I wanted proof that we were not crazy, that the situation was as ridiculous as it appeared. Olivia discovered my journal one day while searching for something in my room. She read it and immediately attacked me, accusing me of plotting to harm her family. She threatened if I revealed that notebook to anybody outside the home, she would notify our parents and I would be punished. I asked her how she could justify what they were doing, and she responded she was protecting her future. She had worked too hard to have me damage her chances of winning. As the tournament approached its second year, the long-term psychological effects became too obvious to overlook. Olivia had developed an eating disorder, controlling her food intake because she convinced herself that staying at a certain weight allowed her greater control over her life. Tyler had been suspended from school twice for fighting and was seeing the school counselor on a weekly basis for anger management concerns. Jacob had stopped sleeping more than 4 hours each night and developed stress-related dermatitis on his arms. I found myself unable to enjoy anything anymore, always calculating if an action would benefit or harm my standing. We were all playing versions of ourselves that our parents had created, and somewhere along the road we had lost sight of who we truly were behind the show. Our parents declared the summer before my senior year that the rankings would continue throughout college. They would pay for one child's whole education, half of the fees for the second-place child, modest assistance for the third-place youngster, and nothing for the fourth. This meant that the competition would go another 4 years, locking us in this system until our early 20s. Olivia was ecstatic since first place came with complete financial independence. The rest of us recognized we would never be free of our parents' grip as long as they had the financial leverage. I began looking into scholarships and financial assistance, preparing for the prospect of having to afford college totally on my own. Jacob did the same. Tyler was just 13 and could not think that far ahead, but I could see despair in his eyes as he understood that this nightmare would characterize his entire youth. Olivia had 90 points as my senior year began, followed by myself with 84, Jacob with 82, and Tyler with 58. The distance between first and last place had risen to 35 points, making it very difficult to close in the months left until Olivia turned 18. She had practically won by delivering constant results and benefiting from Mom's affection. Nevertheless, our parents continued to administer the tournament. They emphasized the need of every one of us continuing to strive, compete, and demonstrate our value. I applied to institutions that provided full-ride scholarships since I knew I could not rely on my parents for anything. Jacob did the same, focusing on colleges with good financial assistance programs. We were plotting our escape routes while still competing in the tournament since we had no other option. Something shifted in December of my senior year. Tyler stopped attending school totally. He would get up, dress, leave the house with his bag, and spend the day in the public library or exploring the city. He would come home at the usual school closing hours so our parents would not notice. He did this for 3 weeks before the school notified our parents of his absences. The confrontation that ensued was nasty. Dad shouted at Tyler for squandering his future and possibilities. Mom revised his ranking to 52 points, the lowest any of us had ever received. Tyler simply stood there and accepted it without defending himself, his expression blank. After our parents departed, I asked him why he had quit attending school. He claimed it did not matter anymore. Nothing he accomplished would matter, so why bother trying? I told him it mattered to me, but he simply walked away. That was my breaking point. I gathered my documentation journal, proof of ranking changes, and psychological harm, and I scheduled an appointment with a family therapist whom my school counselor suggested. Her name was Dr. Harper, and I spent 2 hours in her office explaining everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a manner that reminded me terrifyingly of my mother. After I finished, she asked if I felt physically safe at home, to which I said yes. We were not being attacked, starving, or anything like that. She asked if I felt emotionally safe, and I had no answer. How can you assess emotional safety when you are continuously assessed and graded, and 3 out of 4 of you do not deserve to be a member of the family? Dr. Harper stated that what my parents were doing was a type of psychological abuse known as conditional love and favoritism abuse, which might create long-term pain. She inquired whether I wanted her to report it to Child Protective Services. I sat in her office trying to decide whether reporting would assist or make matters worse. CPS investigations are messy and intrusive, and they do not always produce results. We might wind up in foster care separated from one another, which could be worse than being together under our parents' supervision. But if I did not report it, nothing would change. And Tyler would keep coming apart, and Jacob would keep taking my mother's sleeping pills. Olivia would continue to starve herself, and I would plan my escape while my siblings suffered. Dr. Harper stated that she was a mandated reporter, which meant that if she considered we were in danger, she had to report it regardless of my wishes. She asked me directly whether I believed my siblings were in danger, and I thought about Jacob with the medication bottle, Tyler's blank expression, and Olivia's empty cheeks. I said yes. The CPS inquiry began the next week. Angela Ruiz, a caseworker, arrived at our house unannounced and demanded to talk with each of us separately. Our parents were furious, wanting to know who reported them and what falsehoods were uttered. Angela remained cool and professional, stating that she was there to assure our safety and well-being. She questioned all 3 of us in separate rooms, inquiring about our everyday lives and interactions with our parents. I told her everything, showed her my documentation log, and described the rating system in detail. Olivia staunchly supported our parents, arguing that they were only encouraging us to realize our full potential. Jacob and Tyler validated my story in varied degrees of detail. Angela spent 3 hours at our house photographing the ranking charts on the refrigerator and asking for copies of Mom's scoring diaries. My parents were savvy enough to present the rating system as harsh but lawful parenting. They highlighted that the 3 of us were fed, sheltered, educated, and not physically mistreated. They presented the competition as a motivating framework meant to teach us about real-world pressure. They showed Mom's records as proof of involved parenting rather than psychological manipulation. Angela spoke with our teachers, pediatrician, and other family members. The majority of them agreed that we seemed like high-achieving children from a strict yet prosperous home. The exterior appearance differed so greatly from the interior truth that it was nearly impossible to show abuse occurred. Angela informed me privately that she trusted my story, but she did not have grounds to remove us from the house. The condition was damaging but not unlawful. She suggested family therapy and would check in periodically, but she could not persuade our parents to quit competing. After the CPS inquiry was ended without action, my parents' rage was directed only at me. They knew I had reported them, even if I had not confessed it outright. Mom decreased my ranking to 65 points lower than Jacob for the first time, claiming catastrophic inadequacies in character evaluation. Dad informed me I had betrayed the family and demonstrated why I did not deserve their support. Olivia stopped speaking to me completely, as if I had personally harmed her by calling CPS. Only Jacob and Tyler knew why I did it, and they were too terrified to defend me publicly. To protect my siblings, I had given up my place in the competition, and most likely my connection with my parents, and it did nothing. The rankings continued. Psychological warfare persisted. We were still stuck. The college acceptance letters began arriving in March. I was accepted into 3 institutions that provided full scholarships, which meant I could leave without relying on my parents for anything. Olivia was accepted into 7 famous institutions, and my parents threw her a celebratory party, declaring that they would pay her full tuition and expenses wherever she chose. Jacob enrolled at a public school with limited financial help, and my parents agreed to support 20% of his expenditures, leaving him to sort out the remainder. Tyler was just 14, but witnessing the significantly different celebrations for each of our acceptances showed him exactly what his future would be like, in last position, scarcely recognized and left to fend for himself. I had one last discussion with Olivia before leaving for college. I asked her if winning was worth losing her brothers witnessing Tyler break apart and Jacob nearly commit suicide. She told me I was overreacting, that everything was okay, and that we would all thank our parents for pushing us to achieve. I inquired if she truly thought it, or whether she was simply explaining her decision to participate with their maltreatment. She told me I was envious and resentful over not winning, and that I should concentrate on my own life rather than attempting to bring her down. We have not talked since that discussion. When I moved into my dorm in August, she did not assist me pack or say goodbye. Neither did my parents. Only Jacob and Tyler came to see me depart. And we all grieved in the driveway because we knew I was going to escape. But they remained in the nightmare. College distanced me physically from the competition, but I could not stop thinking about my brothers. Jacob emailed me regular updates on the standings and Tyler's decline. Tyler had been diagnosed with depression and prescribed medicine, but our parents saw it as another failure on his side. They deducted him character points for requiring mental care. Jacob counted down the days until he turned 18 and could legally leave. I sent money from my work-study position whenever I could, knowing he would need help paying for college, which our parents refused to finance. Angela Ruiz from CPS continued to do monthly check-ins, but nothing changed because nothing technically criminal was occurring. Only 3 children were devastated by a competition meant to persuade them that their value was conditional. I did not go home for the summer following my freshman year. I stayed at school to work and take summer courses. My parents wrote me an email indicating they were upset with my decision, but not surprising considering my character flaws. Olivia shared images on social media of their family trip without me. The 3 of them are happy on an expensive beach. Tyler appeared skinny and sad in the photographs. Olivia appeared triumphant, but Jacob appeared to be a ghost. The evident winner posed with our parents as if she had won her position through superiority rather than survival. I felt a strange combination of loss, rage, and relief that I was not present, that I had come out, even if it meant being removed from family memory. Jacob turned 18 in October during my sophomore year. He contacted me from a bus stop at 3 a.m. He said he had departed, packed a suitcase, and strolled out when everyone was asleep. He planned to arrive in his college town early and find lodging and job until school began. Our parents did not attempt to stop him or even call him. They simply changed the rankings to display 2 children instead of 3, rearranging the percentages, so Tyler sank even lower. Olivia was still ahead with 90 points. Despite not having lived at home for nearly a year, I finished second with 75 points. Tyler was last with 53 points. The tournament continued despite the fact that half of the competitors had already gone. Tyler began contacting me every night throughout my sophomore year. He would chat about his day, his homework, or nothing in particular, and I understood he just wanted to hear the voice of someone who cared for him as a person, not as a rating. He was 14 and lived alone with our parents and Olivia, all of whom believed he was the family's failure. He told me how they had stopped inviting him to family dinners, sometimes telling him he could eat in his room because he was not contributing substantially to household talks. He mentioned how Olivia now had her own automobile while he still took the bus everywhere. He remarked that his birthday had passed with only a letter from our parents and no celebration or gifts. He was progressively being wiped from the family while still living in their home, and I could not do much to defend him from 300 kilometers away. The breaking point occurred during Tyler's first year of high school. He contacted me at midnight, weeping so hard that I could not hear him. When he eventually calmed himself enough to speak, he revealed that he had located Mom's master plan paper on her computer. A comprehensive timetable revealed that after Olivia aged 22 and graduated from college, our parents would officially disown the rest of us. They had already created legal paperwork to remove Jacob, Tyler, and myself from their will. They had sent letters to extended relatives explaining why they were separating from 3 of their 4 children. They had estimated how much money they would save if they only invested in Olivia. They had been meticulously preparing this for 3 years, and the competition had only served to make us complicit in our own demise. Tyler read sections of the letter to me over the phone, and I felt physically nauseous hearing our parents describe us as lousy investments and failed experiments. I traveled home the next morning, skipping lessons that I could not afford to miss. I picked up Jacob from his college town on the way. We arrived at the home and ordered a family meeting. Our parents remained calm when I addressed them with what Tyler had discovered. I questioned how they could do this to their own children, how they could deliberately ruin 3 children while elevating 1. My father retorted that they had given us several opportunities to demonstrate our worth, and we had failed. He stated that it was irresponsible to continue investing in youngsters who had not shown an adequate return on that investment. My mother went on to say that Olivia had earned her position via commitment and brilliance, but the rest of us had demonstrated that we did not love family enough to strive for it. Olivia sat there passively, her expression inscrutable, not defending us, not defending them. I informed my parents that they had abused 3 children via competitiveness and conditional affection. I stated that I had 3 years of paperwork confirming the psychological trauma they had caused, and that I was willing to take it to attorneys, therapists, and media if they did not stop. My father scoffed, saying I had no legal standing, no evidence of any criminal activity, and no resources to challenge them. He was correct in all of this, but I also had something he did not expect. I had been filming the chat on my phone since the minute we sat down. In that tape, they acknowledged intending to disown 3 of their children based on a rating system that they had manipulated for years. It may not have been unlawful, but it provided devastating evidence of their genuine intents. I listened back to the footage and saw my parents' expressions alter. I told them I wanted the competition to finish immediately. I wanted Tyler's living circumstances to change, and I wanted them to consent to family treatment with an outside counselor, or the video would be given to everyone we knew, including our church community, extended relatives and co-workers. I would ensure that everyone realized exactly what they had done. It was blackmail, and I was not proud of it, but I had no other alternatives for defending my younger brother. My parents were silent for a long time, until my father agreed to my requests. That day the ranking charts fell. The monthly review ended. Tyler was granted privacy and respect, something he had been denied for years. We began family therapy the next week, but my parents spent most of the sessions attempting to persuade the therapist that they had been misunderstood. The harm had already been done. However, Olivia completed college with full parental support and promptly cut off communication with me, Jacob, and Tyler. She had accepted the message that we were failures who would bring her down, and she prioritized our parents' favor over sibling relationships. I had lost my oldest sister to the competition despite the fact that I had technically won the last bout. Jacob took 6 years to complete college since he worked full-time to pay for it without parental assistance. Tyler was now 16 and lived in a family where the competition had technically stopped, but the hierarchy and favoritism persisted. He counted the days till he could depart for college and never return. I graduated with debt from the years I worked 2 jobs and took extra semesters to support my own bills since full-time tuition was prohibitively expensive. The 3 of us had survived, but our parents' actions had left us all damaged. 3 years after the competition officially concluded, I received a call from Angela Ruiz, the CPS caseworker, who had attempted to assist us. She was drafting a paper on long-term psychological maltreatment in high-achieving families and requested permission to incorporate our story anonymously. I agreed and spent 2 hours on the phone with her explaining the competition and its consequences. She told me she had seen dozens of situations like ours families whose parents devised intricate mechanisms to throw children against one another in the name of motivation. She said that the majority of these incidents were unreported because the abuse was nuanced and clever, disguised behind ideals such as healthy competition and high standards. She was attempting to provide better frameworks for recognizing and intervening in these situations. I handed her my documentation diary, the recording, and my permission to use anything she needed. If our pain could save other families from going through the same tragedy, it could have been worthwhile. Tyler departed for college last year with a full scholarship to a school 300 miles away. He contacted me from his dorm room, weeping with joy that he had finally fled. He is dealing with a trauma therapist and is establishing an identity independent from the rankings and competitiveness. Jacob is currently working in technology and has broken off all communication with our parents. I chat to him once a week, and we are repairing our brother connection outside of the rivalry context. We are learning to care for each other without evaluating our relative value. It is unusual, tough, and healing. Olivia writes me emails on occasion to explain why she picked our parents over us, but I no longer respond. She made her choice, and I have accepted the loss of that connection. I am 24 years old and still in treatment, dealing with the effects of the competition on my self-esteem. Dr. Harper. The first therapist I spoke with helped me understand that I have always been enough, that my worth is not defined by rankings, parental acceptance, or achievements that are evaluated and compared. That knowledge comes and goes. Some days I believe it. Some days I still find myself calculating if I am doing enough, achieving enough, or demonstrating enough. The competition may have finished, but its consequences are eternal. My parents set up a system that taught us that we were only worthy of love if we outperformed one another. And that lesson is deeply ingrained in how we view ourselves in the world. My parents still do not think they did anything wrong. In their thoughts, they pushed us to succeed. We are all better for it now. They do not address the eating problem, suicide attempt, sadness, or broken family ties. They do not accept responsibility for organizing a tournament in which 3 youngsters had to lose for 1 to win. They still see Olivia as the golden kid, and the rest of us as failures who did not work hard enough. I have realized that I will never receive an apology or acknowledgement from them. The most I can do is stop the pattern, live a life based on other ideals, and ensure that I never put other people through what they did to